Welcome back to the deep dive. You know how this works. You send us interesting source material, and we really get into it to pull out the key takeaways for you.
Yeah, we aim to give you that deep understanding, quick and clear, without you feeling like you're drowning in details.
So today we're doing something pretty cool, looking behind the curtain at how a big event gets organized.
That's right. One of you sent over a whole package of documents about the Coal India Half Marathon, the 2024-25 one. It's being put on by Mahadi Coalfields Limited, MCL, in Pubanswa.
And we've got quite the collection here. There's the main tender document, the actual contract order, a service level agreement, the SLA, and the scope of work document.
It's a really comprehensive set.
Okay, so our mission, if you will, for this deep dive is to figure out, what really goes into planning and executing a massive running event like this one.
Yeah, what are the absolute must-haves, the challenges, the considerations? We're looking at it all through the lens of this specific MCL tender.
What jumps out right away, I think, is just the incredible level of detail. I mean, it's intense.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't just like, okay, run from A to B.
Right.
These documents cover everything from the exact type of fabric for the runner's T-shirts
Right.
to really specific rules about what happens if the contract isn't followed perfectly.
Yeah,
It's meticulous.
exactly. So let's start with the event basics. It's the Coal India Half Marathon 2024-25, run by MCL.
Planned location is Kalinga Stadium in Bhubaneswar, although that depends on getting the final permits, which is pretty standard.
And it's an early start, 5:00 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. morning event.
And the main objective for whoever wins this tender to manage everything, like the whole shebang.
All the publicity beforehand, the branding, setting up the races, the prizes, even the stuff that happens after everyone's finished running.
Yep. And it's not just the half marathon distance either. They're including a 10K timed race and a 5K race too.
Which makes sense, opens it up to more people, different running levels.
Definitely broader appeal. Now that scope of work document,
Right.
that's where you really see the nitty-gritty, all the tasks the event manager has to handle.
Why do you think they go into so much detail in the scope?
Well, I think it reflects just how complex these things are.
Yeah.
An event this size has so many moving parts.
Right.
This document is basically the blueprint. It's trying to make sure MCL and the organizer are totally aligned on every single expectation, every responsibility. No room for misunderstandings.
Okay. And it's broken down, you said, before, during, after the race.
Exactly. So let's look at the pre-event stuff first. You've got the basics, like getting all the permissions, the no objection certificates, the NOCs.
MCL helps with that, the documents say.
Yeah, which is good, leverages their local know-how. But then there's this interesting detail, a specific dress code for all the event staff.
Why is that important, do you think?
Probably for easy identification.
Mm.
Volunteers, security organizers, makes them stand out, looks professional, helps manage things on the day, a unified look.
Makes sense, professionalism. And also, a big logistical job before the race. Getting the participant kits ready and handed out.
Oh yeah, that's huge. And these are just token bags. We're talking branded T-shirts, specifically dry fit material.
What's dry fit again?
It's that breathable, moisture-wicking fabric. Good for runners, keeps them comfortable. Plus BIB numbers, the race numbers, they need the participant's name printed on them.
Personal touch.
Exactly. And caps and goodie bags with various items inside. Getting all that sorted and distributed before race day is critical. Avoids a bottleneck.
Total chaos otherwise on the morning of. And then there's the stuff you might not notice, but it's vital. Cleaning the venue, the whole route.
Safety, good impression.
Setting up everything at the start, finish, along the course. And they need a pretty sophisticated online registration system, maybe even software for a pre-race expo.
That registration portal is key for handling potentially thousands of runners smoothly. Okay, so race day itself, this is where it gets particularly interesting.
What stands out?
Well, one thing that really caught my eye is the requirement for live video streaming of the entire race route.
The entire route, wow.
Yeah, but here's the catch. It's only required if they get at least 3,000 participants.
Okay, so that number, 3,000, that tells you something about the scale they're aiming for, right? That's a lot of runners.
It's a significant number.
Yeah.
And live streaming the whole route, that's not just for show. It boosts engagement, could attract sponsors, gives you great content afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Shows they need a certain scale to make that tech investment worthwhile. So on the day, the manager also has to handle, obviously, water, refreshments along the route.
Hydration, energy,
Yeah.
essential.
medical support stations,
Hmm.
and critically, managing the crowds. That's got to be a huge job.
Crowd management is paramount. You need to keep runners safe, keep the race flowing, avoid any issues.
And what about the race itself, the timing and all that?
Right, so the scope demands certified route measurement. That's vital for the credibility of a timed race.
Got to be accurate.
Makes sense. For a half marathon, people care about the exact distance. Exactly. And the timing system itself needs to be super precise. Using RFID chips, they even suggest top international brands like MyLapse or Chronotrack.
RFID, how does that work?
Radio frequency identification. Basically, chips, usually on the bib or shoe, get scanned automatically by mats, placed along the course start, finish, maybe some intermediate points. Gives very accurate times.
Okay, so multiple mats for accuracy too.
Yep. Minimizes missed reads, gives split times. It really shows they're serious about the competitive aspect, especially for prize money contenders.
You definitely see that push for professionalism, and the job isn't done when the race finishes, right?
Not at all. The manager has to process results, get e-certificates out to everyone within a week. Quick turnaround.
And produce a post-event video clip too. Highlights, promotion for next year, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Keeps participants happy, builds buzz. Now, should we dive into some of the specific items they need to provide? The detail here is kind of amazing.
Let's do it, because it really paints a picture. Like the t-shirts, not just t-shirts.
No, it's dry fit fabric. A specific GSM, that's grams per square meter, dictates the fabric weight.
Okay.
Half sleeves, round neck, specific size breakdowns, branded logos, maybe even different colors for different race categories.
Super specific. And the BIB numbers, branded with the runner's name.
And those RFID chips, again, specified reliable international brands. The timing system needs those multiple mats we mentioned.
What about the goodie bags?
Well, the tender refers to an Annexure 3 that probably lists exactly what goes in them. Suggests they've really thought about what runners would actually want or need.
Even the caps material, dimensions, branding, even metal buttons with MCL logo.
And the metals. It's not just any metal.
No, they specify the material: antique brass, copper or silver finish,
Yeah.
precise diameter, thickness,
A gridded length, width, polyester, digitally printed, even the metal's weight is mentioned.
and the shape could be round, oval, or whatever MCL finally decides. With the CIL and Coal India half marathon logos, of course, it really reinforces the prestige.
Definitely. And the refreshment packets for after the race are spelled out too. Banana, apple, sandwich, a sweet water bottle, cupcake, juice, dates, even sprouts.
Wow, sprouts, that's unexpected. A focus on nutrition, I guess.
Seems like it. A good mix. And along the route, more hydration, fruit, energy boosters. They suggest things like ORS electrolyte drinks, lemons, chicky.
What's chicky?
It's a traditional Indian sweet, often made with nuts like peanuts and jaggery. Good, quick energy.
Okay, so they've thought of pretty much everything a runner might need. It's impressive.
It really is. And then there's the whole list of services the organizer has to hire or arrange.
Right, beyond just the physical items, like branding the whole venue and route, visually tie it all together.
And bringing in tons of temporary stuff. Tables, chairs, racks for bags, even plug points and computers with internet for registration.
The computers with internet shows how much relies on tech now, even on the day.
Absolutely. Then the people.
Yeah.
Volunteers, someone running the PA system, photographers, videographers.
Including a drone operator for those epic aerial shots.
Yeah. Plus practical things. Dustbins, backup generators, security bouncers, barricades, a big welcome gate.
And things to enhance the vibe. A Zumba instructor for warm-ups, a singer, cultural groups along the route for local flavor.
Adds to the experience. And then the core race logistics. A dedicated timing tent, start-finish gates, medal area, a big digital clock showing the race time.
Selfie backdrops essential these days. Live LED screens showing results, maybe live telecast screens for spectators.
Secure baggage tents, refreshment tents, garbage bags, portable toilets, water tankers, mineral water, medical counters.
And pacers, experienced runners helping others hit their time goals. It's just an exhaustive list.
It really is. Which naturally leads to the question, who can actually do all this? Who qualifies to bid?
Yeah.
The criteria are pretty strict.
Right. Let's talk about qualifications. First, their legal status has to be solid.
Yeah, they need to be a proper registered business proprietorship, partnership, or a company. Interestingly, they generally don't allow joint ventures for this.
Why not, usually?
For a service like this, they probably want a single point of accountability. Clear responsibility. JVs are sometimes allowed for huge infrastructure projects, but not here.
Okay. And experience is key, obviously. What do they need to show?
Very specific experience. At least one successfully run long-distance event marathon, half, 10K, 5K timed race.
With a minimum of 3,000 participants, that number again.
Right. And crucially, within the last 3 years. Plus, at least one of those events must have included that live video streaming of the whole route.
Ah, so that live streaming isn't just a nice to have for the event, it's a qualification requirement for the bidders. Really narrows the field.
Exactly. It proves they can handle the tech and logistics of a large, modern event. And they need proof, a certificate from the previous host organization.
With all the details, dates, work order number, who hired them, value of the contract, verifiable proof.
Can't just say you did it. You need evidence. Then there's the financial side. They need to show they have enough working capital,
Yeah.
at least 20% of this tender's estimated value. And they need a certificate from a chartered accountant with a UDI that's a unique document ID number for authenticity, proving this within the last 3 months.
So financially stable enough to handle the upfront costs and cash flow. Makes sense.
Yep. Plus, mandatory GST registration, got to be registered for tax and provide the certificate, and submit all their basic legal business documents.
Okay, pretty standard stuff there. What about undertakings, formal promises?
Several of those, they have to declare all info is genuine, state if any relatives work at MCL, avoiding conflicts of interest,
Right.
agree to arbitration for disputes, confirm if they're a local supplier, and commit to the CIPP, the Code of Integrity for Public Procurement.
That CIPP sounds important. We'll probably come back to that.
Definitely. There are also specific rules for MSC's micro and small enterprises. If they qualify, they need to provide proof, might get some preference under government policy.
Supporting smaller businesses. And you mentioned local supplier. Is that tied to the Make in India initiative?
Exactly. Big emphasis on that. Bidders need to comply with policies favoring local content. For tenders under 10 crore rupees, a self-certification is okay.
And over 10 crore.
Then they need a certificate from a statutory auditor or cost accountant verifying the percentage of local content. They even define Class I, Class II, and non-local suppliers based on that percentage.
So a real push for local sourcing.
Clearly. And finally, a warning. Any misleading or false info means automatic disqualification. Honesty is non-negotiable.
So yeah, a tough barrier to entry. They want capable, experienced, financially sound, and ethical organizations.
That's the goal. Now, once someone gets through that, what does the actual contract look like? What are the key terms?
Okay, let's look at the contractual side. The contract order gives the basic service period is roughly late December 24 to late March 25.
Covers the whole event cycle, planning to wrap up. Billing is quarterly, and it's a lump sum contract for the whole job.
And the SLA, the service level agreement, along with the tender doc, spells out payment terms. It follows GEM-M guidelines, that's the government e-marketplace.
Standard for public procurement in India.
And MCL's schedule. But crucially, payment only happens after satisfactory completion, minus any penalties. Keeps the provider accountable.
Definitely. The SLA also lists the provider's obligations, which are massive. Planning, execution, providing all manpower, materials, expertise.
Delivering on time, cleaning up the site afterwards, removing all the garbage.
Coordinating with local authorities, police, traffic management, that's critical.
And getting all the licenses, fire permits, maybe excise, whatever's needed. And they bear the cost.
Plus providing all the temporary infrastructure. We talked about dustbins, fire extinguishers, PA systems, security, and timelines are a strict essence of the contract. Means delays cost money. They also need to provide regular progress reports.
It's a huge responsibility. What happens if they mess up? Breach of contract.
It's clearly defined. Any failure to meet standards is a breach. There are specific financial penalties for delays, not delivering services, staff shortages, even employee misconduct.
And if penalties pile up,
If they hit 10% of the contract value, MCL can terminate the contract. Serious consequences.
and those liquidated damages for delays, how much?
It's 0.5% of the contract value per week of delay, up to a certain maximum. But there's room for extensions if delays are genuinely unavoidable.
Like what?
Force majeure acts of God, basically.
Yes.
Severe bad weather impacting the event. Delays caused by MCL themselves, like not providing something they were supposed to. Or if the scope of work increases significantly.
Okay, so there's some flexibility for legitimate reasons. There's a formula to calculate the extension time, too.
Yeah. Interestingly, while the contractor usually provides everything, the contract mentions MCL. Might supply some materials like steel or cement at fixed rates.
Steel and cement for a marathon seems odd.
Might be standard contract boilerplate, more relevant for construction, but it's in there. With rules about wastage if they do supply materials.
Quality control's big, too, right? MCL can inspect anytime.
Absolutely. Contractor can't hide or cover up work without approval. and defects have to be fixed at their own cost. If work isn't up to scratch, payments could be reduced.
And how is work measured for payment?
Joint measurements, recorded in a formal measurement book. Interim payments might be possible based on progress, but extra work needs written approval before it's done to get paid for it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned debarment earlier. That sounds serious.
It is. Being debarred means you're banned from future MCL contracts.
What triggers that?
A bunch of things. Withdrawing your bid late, not providing the security deposit, failing to actually start the work, poor performance, breaching the contract, lying on the application, using shoddy materials, price fixing with other bidders,
Wow.
and violating that code of integrity, the CIPP. Debarment affects future bids, and it can hit the whole company and its partners.
So high stakes for ethical behavior, which brings us back to that integrity pact, Annexure X.
Exactly. It's a formal commitment signed by both MCL and the bidder contractor. They promise ethical conduct, transparency, no corruption, fair play throughout the whole process. Specific promises from both sides.
And the Code of Integrity itself, the CIPP in Annexure 66, what does that cover?
It defines prohibited practices very clearly. Fraud, collusion, coercion, conflicts of interest obstructing the process. It stresses being proactive, declare potential conflicts up front, disclose any past ethical violations.
So it's layer upon layer of trying to ensure this whole thing is run cleanly, ethically, and effectively.
Absolutely. It's not just about getting the race run. It's about how it's procured and managed. Reflects a broader push for transparency in public spending.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've really unpacked a lot here about what it takes to organize this Coal India half marathon.
Yeah, we've seen the massive scope of work, the incredibly specific requirements down to metal weight and t-shirt fabric.
The tough qualification hurdles bidders have to clear, showing experience, financial health, and technical capability, like that live streaming requirement.
And the strong emphasis on ethics, transparency, and accountability baked into the contract, with things like the Integrity Pact and the CIPP, plus penalties for failure.
What really stood out to me, I think, was just how granular it all is. MCL clearly had a very precise vision for this event. The detail on goodie bags, refreshments, medals, it shows intense planning.
And that live streaming requirement tied to the 3,000 plus participant number, that's a significant marker of the event's ambition and scale.
So for you listening, hopefully this gives you a real appreciation for the sheer amount of work, the meticulous planning, the coordination, all the invisible effort that goes into a big public event like a marathon.
Yeah, it's a fascinating window into both event management and how public procurement works, especially for significant projects.
Which leads to our final thought for you to ponder. What other kinds of large projects, maybe building infrastructure, rolling out new tech, even big festivals, might have similarly detailed, complex, and frankly, fascinating requirements buried in their planning documents?
Makes you think about the unseen complexity behind so many things we experience, doesn't it?
It really does. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.